welcome to Up for Debate's 2024 local election special. Today we'll talk about and take a deeper look at the two heated races in the greater Olean area, which impact both the entire county as well as New York State. Up first, we're going to take a look at the race for the 148th District of New York, which lost its current assembly member, Joe Giglio, when he announced he would not seek re-election this year.
With Up for Debate. Joining us in the studio, we have Joe Sempolinski, a former congressman for the 23rd Congressional District of New York, who also served as Chief of Staff for the 148th Assembly District, now candidate for New York State Assembly, and a repeat guest on Up for Debate. Welcome to the show, Joe Sempolinski.
That's right. I came down here when I was running for Congress, so it's good to be back here at the BOCES campus.
Which, like I said before, I have 5 questions for you.
Okay.
First, for citizens who don't know, why is it important for people to vote for assembly members?
Oh, that's a very good question. So it's something that doesn't get quite as much attention as federal elections, but the person that's your assembly member, the analogous role in the federal government would be your U.S. congressman. It's the lower house of the legislature. So any bill that that becomes a law in the state of New York has to go through the Assembly and the Senate, just like at the federal level, it has to go through the House of Representatives and the Senate. So this is the legislative member that's closest to the people. And also, it's the person, if you're having a problem with a state agency, it's probably going to be your first call to try and help you out with that. So if you want to have your voice heard in Albany, and remember, the laws that get made in Albany may not get the same attention as the laws that are made in Washington, but in many cases, they're the ones that affect you closer day to day. If you want to make sure that somebody who represents your values, your voice, your perspective, your region of the state, that's a strong voice, is going to be there for you, you should make sure you vote for state assembly. And of course, all the other offices on the ballot are very important too. And most people that have lived on this planet, haven't had a voice. They've been dictated to. We are blessed to live in a democratic republic. So I encourage people of all political persuasions to get out and vote, make sure your voice is heard.
Well, thank you. Could you please outline your top priorities for our community should you be elected?
Yeah, I would say in this area, the top priority has been for a very long time economic development. This is a rural area, and also we're right next to Pennsylvania. So the rules that get made in Albany, we have to compete not just with everyone else in the world that every business does, but we have to compete directly with the rules that are made in Pennsylvania. So if there's a better business environment in Pennsylvania compared to New York, we feel that in the southern tier. I mentioned we're a rural area. So we don't have the population density of some other places, so we have to work a little bit harder to make sure there are job opportunities. I'm raising my family. I have 2 young daughters. I'm raising my family right here in the 148th Assembly District. This is a great place to grow up, and I would emphasize that to all the folks that are watching. This is a great place to grow up. It's a great place to go to school. It's a great program here at BOCES that I'm participating in now. We have a variety of colleges and universities here in the assembly districts, more than most assembly districts. But then a lot of times people get a great education in primary and secondary school. They get a great education in college, and then they feel they have to go somewhere else to follow their dreams. If you want to do that, then God bless you, go do that. But wouldn't it be great to also have the option to say, hey, listen, what if there were great job opportunities, great economic growth happening, great prosperity happening right here in Cattaraugus, Allegheny, and Steuben counties? That would be a great outcome. But we have to make sure that we have good economic policy coming out of Albany to make that happen.
Are there any specific, policies you plan on implementing? And if so, do any of these include the rising use of automation?
Automation? Oh, so from a manufacturing perspective? Or
like automation, as in manufacturing, as well as like AI use.
Oh, okay.
So hand in hand.
Yeah, this is important, and it dovetails with the last question, where every time there's a technological innovation, new generation of technology, there's opportunities and there's challenges. And the challenges tend to come from perhaps something that was a job that was necessary earlier becomes less necessary. You know, if you're making buggy whips and they invent the automobile, well, then you're probably going to need to innovate. Otherwise, you're not going to sell as many buggy whips as people are driving cars instead of having a horse. So as we move forward into new technologies, we have to not only as individuals and as companies innovate, but as students and as educators, we have to make sure that we're preparing students for the future. Because technology is going to come, and there's sort of no stopping innovation. That's a good thing, and we want to make sure that innovation is happening in a fair way. That we'd love to have it happen in the United States. We'd love to have it happen in New York State, where new technologies are coming, and the opportunities that come with them. But we have to also prepare people for the challenges and say, well, maybe a particular job is going to look a little different, or maybe there's a new job opportunity that wasn't there before with a new technology. So we have to have, from a policy standpoint in Albany, one of the biggest areas that the state government has a large domain over compared to the federal or local governments is education. That's, if you look at one of the biggest spending items, you just look at the state budget, where are they spending their money? It tends to be on education as one of the biggest things. So, for instance, here at BOCES, there's a very practical programs that are preparing people for the jobs of the future. And we need to do more of that. We need to look at our curricula and say, all right, when people are graduating from high school, when they're graduating from community college, when they're graduating from a SUNY four-year school, all of which have relationships with the state government, are they really prepared for the jobs of today, but also are they prepared for the jobs of tomorrow? Are we teaching for the last generation technology or for the next generation technology? And those are policy questions and spending priority questions that happen in Albany.
I know you mentioned bills and stuff prior. So what's your stance on the current tax rate, and do you plan on, implementing any change into that?
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, how do assembly members implement tax-related bills?
So there's, at the state level, if we spend it, we have to get it from somewhere. The federal government can deficit spend. It can spend more than it takes in. The state government, and this applies to all states, not just New York, they have to balance their books. So if we're spending a lot of money, which we do in New York, we spend approximately as much as the state government as Texas and Florida put together. Texas is bigger than New York, and Florida is bigger than New York, and we're spending approximately as much as them put together. So that money has to come from somewhere, and it comes from all of us. It comes from the taxpayer. So if, as I said earlier, one of my concerns is economic development, well, now we've put ourselves in a position where if I'm a business owner looking to put a business, well, I'm going to pay a very high tax rate if I'm in New York compared to being in some other states. So if we can get a better handle on that, I think we'll do better across the board, not only for the individual taxpayer, but then also for economic growth. But it's a big part of what happens in Albany. The state legislature is in session generally the first half of the calendar year. And the first 3 months of that, first half of that half, is basically dealing with the budget. At the beginning of the session, the governor puts forward her executive budget, and then the debate begins within the Assembly, within the Senate, as to should we spend more on this or less on that. And every person that has business with the state of New York comes and makes the case for their program, their priority, their spending. And it's a very big process, especially when you're dealing with a state as big as the state of New York. This is not a small state. It's called the Empire State for a region. It's for a reason. It's got a lot of different regions, a lot of different diversity of perspectives. So the question of the budget every year is sort of the dominant policy and legislative question every year in session. And then, of course, there's other more ideological things or more policy-based things that happen. But when the fiscal year is coming to an end, the state fiscal year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So if you look at the calendar for the state legislature, there's already days built in March. There's more days scheduled because they know everybody's going to be concerned about what's happening with the budget.
And for our final question, similar to what you stated initially, how do you plan to ensure access to social services for those that, are facing hardships in the community?
Well, that's a even more difficult question in this district than it is in some other areas, because if you're in New York City, it's a little easier to move about if perhaps you don't have a car, or or perhaps you have limited means because you have a lot of public transportation and there's a lot of things close together. You have 8 million people living in one city. The assembly district that I'm running for is the size of the state of Delaware. If you drive from one end of it to the other, it takes you 2 hours to do that. So that produces access problems for people who are trying to access those services. So what I try to do, what I will try to do, is to keep close relationships with the people that are in many cases providing those services at the county level or at the city level or directly through state agencies, and make sure that the voices of the people that live in not just the more densely populated portions of the rural areas, but the more rural parts of the rural areas, that they know that those folks need to access services just as much as people that live in larger communities. It's a continual challenge in this part of the world, and it's one of the reasons why it's important to have somebody in this position who has a perspective across the entire assembly district and knows all these sort of peculiar issues for all these many different communities. When you have a district as big as this, you have different perspectives in different parts of that district. You mentioned at the beginning, I'm a former U.S. congressman. So I served, that district was the size of the state of New Jersey, so I'm used to dealing with a large district. But every square inch of the 148th Assembly District was in the 23rd Congressional District, where I was blessed to be the representative. And I served as a staff person, as you mentioned, in the Assembly office. I also served as a staff person in the Congressional office. So my entire public career, I've spent in every portion of this Assembly District on either federal or state issues, dealing with constituents and trying to make sure that they are getting a fair shake from their government. This is a big part of that.
Well, thank you for joining us for a debate. It was a pleasure having you here, and I do wish you the best of luck on election day.
Thank you very much. I encourage everyone to get out and vote.
Sheep. Why did it have to be sheep? Find your adventure at Christie's Boutique.
That was Joe Sempolinski, who previously worked in Congress. He sat down with us last week to talk about his campaign, policies, and stances on important issues. Next up is Dan Brown, a crop farmer and town supervisor for Great Valley. He is also no stranger to the election process, as he himself ran for New York State Senate's 75th District in 2022. Mr. Brown is looking to represent a group of underrepresented voters, those working on farms or living in rural areas. We also sat down with Mr. Brown last week.
So I have 5 questions for you. First one, for citizens who don't know, why is it important for people to vote assembly members?
Assembly members? Well, let's start from the beginning. There's 150 assembly seats in New York State. And our district, the 148, would be in the minority. There's out of that 150 seats, 48 of them are held by Republicans, and 102 are held by Democrats. And the Democrats have the supermajority up there. So anything that we are trying to do down here, we're going to have to sway the Democratic majority to help us. Any problems, any issues, anything with our schools, our roads, our communities, our bail reform, anything like that. If we belong in the majority, I believe we can get more done. Obviously, majority rules. It's the way government works. So I hope everyone understands that and realizes that we are such difference in our majority down here.
Could you please outline your top priorities for our community should you be elected?
I think we need to first, my town, every town in this district struggles with drugs. We need to tackle the drug issues. We need to get people the help they need, the therapy they need, the treatment they need, and also the incarceration part of that too. My town, every town is struggling with the bail deal. The bail needs to be reformed. That's not working. We need to get the control back into our judges and our troopers, our sheriffs, our police. We need to tackle that first and foremost. I just see that. I represent my town, but I'm also the chairman of the Town Supervisors Association for the county, Cattaraugus, which is a total of 32 towns in our county, and 29 in Allegheny County, and the 6 that represent the district in Steuben County. Every one of them struggle with the same problem. We need to redo the bail reform and tackle those issues. That's my first and foremost.
Are there any specific policies you plan on impacting? And if so, do any of these involve the raising use of audio manufacturing?
Well, many of these issues, I think COVID was a terrible time, but it also taught us how we can compensate, and so many people are working from home now, have that ability. With the better, stronger internet that we have throughout Cattaraugus County, it's able people to live in our county, but be employed by firms in other states, in other cities. I think we can enhance that even more and deal with that, and get more young people living in our district. We're losing population. That's why the district has to be as large as it is to meet the population of the criteria when it comes to assembly seats. Where downstate, many of the districts are sized in blocks. We're up here, we're 2 counties and 6 towns to create the same population. So I think we can enhance that through better internet and bring more young people and keep more young people into our area for employment.
What is your sentence on the current tax rates, and do you have any plans to change them?
Well, I think we can certainly do better. In the 19 years that I've worked for the people of the town of Great Valley, we've never gone over our tax cap. In fact, we just completed our budget for 2025, and we were seeing a $2 per $100,000 assessment. So if your house is worth $100,000, you're going to see your taxes go up just $2 total. $200,000 house, $4. We've kept that. The town of Great Valley has a extremely healthy reserve fund. We're $13,000 under what our tax cap is, and we've never gone out of the tax cap. So I bring that frugalness, I guess, to the table when I work on that budget. It's just the way I am, and I think we need to. There's ways that we can do better with our taxes and with our spending.
Can you clear up for those that don't know, how do assembly members impact tax?
Well, there's 3 forms of the government. We have the governor, the Senate, and the Assembly. And those 3 forms have to work together to create that budget that becomes our New York State budget, which then becomes what our taxes are in this state. And again, us being rural New York, it's far different than downstate New York, but yet we're being represented by 48 people out of 150. I think we can just get in the majority. We all know how that works. We get in the majority. I think we can impact that better and bring more meat and potatoes to our district here as opposed to scraps.
How do you plan to ensure access to social services for involves factoring hardships in our community.
Say that again.
How do you plan to ensure accesses to social services for involved factoring hardship in our community?
Well, again, that goes back to dealing with issues in the public sector. I'm dealing with some issues in our town right now where people, their homes are in bad shape. The jobs are not there. We're working through some of the county programs to help some of these folks. I'm also trying to do that in the town of Allegheny, where I work part-time in their code and enforcement office. So I see that firsthand. I never wanted to be a code officer, but I stepped in to fill in for our town, and I'm helping out in the town of Allegheny that recently lost their fellow person moved on. So I can see the hardships firsthand. I can try to help with these people, and I live it with them. So that goes back to, again, being in the majority, getting a hold of more of our money down here, more of our taxes should come back to this area. I think we can do it. I know we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Up for Debate. It is a pleasure having Dan Brown. Good luck on your election day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Craving something sweet? La Dolce Vita is a local bakery and cafe that is sure to put a smile on your face, even on your rainiest of days.
La Dolce Vita, bad days end here.
Welcome back to Up for Debate's 2024 local election special. Correction in that last statement. Dan Brown ran for the 57th District of New York, not the 75th. Moving on to a race that encompasses all of Cattaraugus County, we're looking, of course, at the sheriff's election.
We reached out to both candidates, acting Sheriff Eric Butler and candidate DJ Whitmore. However, Mr. Butler had to unexpectedly cancel.
Whitmore, an Air Force veteran and employee of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, talked with us last week about his campaign as well as key issues for his campaign. Take a look.
Joining us in the studio is a veteran of Gulf War and employee of Federal Bureau of Prisons. Officer Whitmore promised to serve with honesty and integrity, successfully tackling rising crime rates in the community and buildings and the public trust through honesty. Welcome to the show, candidate Cattaraugus County Sheriff, DJ Whitmore.
Thank you very much for having me today. Appreciate that.
All right. Your first question is, what are some policies you will implement or change as a sheriff?
So one of the things that I want to gain back is the public trust. During my campaign, I went door to door, meeting the people where they live, and that was very effective. And we got to learn that there's a degree of loss of public trust, and I want to build back public trust, and that is through community policing and also making the sheriff's department very accessible to the citizens of this county.
That's interesting. Well, what inspired you to pursue a career in law reinforcement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was unsure when I got out of the military what I wanted to do. Actually, I wanted to be a gym teacher. Went to Cortland State and was pursuing a degree in physical education to be a gym teacher. And there was a lot of students coming back that had graduated saying that there was no job. So I certainly had to get into a field that had availability for employment. So came back home and attended JCC, where I stumbled into the Correctional Officer Academy and did that. And I got hired on at the Cattaraugus County Jail in 1993. And in 1994, I hired on with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So it was kind of by accident that I got into a law enforcement career, but certainly found it very rewarding and enjoyed my 30 years with the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
All right. Question number 3. What big concerning among our population is law enforcement responding to a mental health crisis? How do you plan to expose officers to these kinds?
So you're talking about the citizens among us that are having mental health issues? Okay, great. Yeah, that's one of my campaign, as far as platforms that I've been working off is the fact that, I just don't think it's going to be one agency that's going to tackle this problem. I think we have to come together as far as our local leaders, law enforcement, and the citizens. And it's just not one agency. It's going to be social workers, helping folks that have mental health issues or homeless issues to find housing, to get into behavioral health programs so that they can have mental health benefits, and also substance abuse. So it's a wide range of things that I think is causing the issues today in our communities. Certainly our cities are in crisis. I, for one, live in Salamanca or just outside of Salamanca in the town of Little Valley, and I've put boots on the ground in Salamanca and seen the crisis firsthand. And it's, I don't think you're going to go in there just intimidating folks with law enforcement because that doesn't seem to be working. I think it's going to take all of us working together to tackle this problem.
All right. Question number 4. How do you plan to collaborate with other local agencies and organizations?
Yeah, another great question. So we all know that the legislature meets once a week on Wednesday nights. And I don't think that it's been introduced, or they've never, possibly have never done it. But one of my ideas is to do a community relations board. So there's 32 towns and villages in Cattaraugus County, and there is 2 cities, Salamanca and Olean, and then also the Seneca Nation territory. Once a month, or possibly quarterly, having those town leaders, town supervisors, the mayors of those villages, the mayors of the cities, come to the county building, and we share ideas. We start tackling these problems together. Because I've been to city council meetings, I've been to town board member meetings, and the overwhelming concern that they have is they feel like they're on an island, and there's no support, and obviously they can't tackle the problem alone. So that would be one of my first things to do, is make sure that there's a collaborative effort through all the county, and that we're meeting regularly to tackle these issues in our community.
All right. Last question. Why do you believe it's important to elect a sheriff rather than impermanent by legislature?
What was, I didn't catch the last part.
I said, let me just repeat the question.
Yes, sir.
Why do you believe it's important to elect a sheriff rather than be importunated by a legislator?
So the sheriff is the only elected law enforcement official in the country. So it's the only one. Most law enforcement agencies appoint like a chief or somebody to run or lead their agency. So sheriff in the county is the only one. If I'm getting your question, is that what you're looking for? Okay, good. And we've got to get this right. It's taxpayers' money is at work here, right? It's elected position where the taxpayers are paying for this position, and we've got to get this right. And the sheriff's budget is $25 million, which makes up 10% of the overall budget, but it makes up 30% of the tax levy on the citizens of this county. So we are civil servants that work for the taxpayers, and we've got to always remember that. And it's an honor to work for the public. Civil service is sometimes a thankless job, but it's paid by the taxpayers, and we've got to ensure that we're upholding the expectation of the taxpayers.
Thank you for joining us up for debate. It was a pleasure having you here, and good luck on your election day.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me.
Once again, we want to inform you Acting Sheriff Eric Butler was contacted for an interview, but needed to cancel due to unforeseen circumstances.
Thank you for tuning into Up for Debate's 2024 local election special. We hope that all of you take the time to vote and do your civic duty. Thank you to all of our guests, and good luck at the polls tomorrow.